Hey, Anna Beth.
Hey, Levi.
Good to see you.
Good to see you too.
As you know, we're on this journey through a post-October 7th Israel. And we're really trying to figure out what Israel looks like in this situation. We've had a chance to talk to quite a few people now, and looking forward to our conversation because you used to be a part of something called the Students for Justice in Palestine movement. Is that right?
Yes.
Can you tell us a little bit about this movement?
Sure. SJP is a pretty highly organized student movement at universities all over the U.S. and other places that really focuses on boycotting Israel in favor of the liberation of Palestine.
Okay, so boycotting Israel, liberation of Palestine. I believe this is the same group that was involved and really supported a lot of the campus university protests in the spring of 24. Is that right?
That is correct, yes.
Okay. So you used to be a part of this group. What led you to be a part of Students for Justice in Palestine?
So I love languages, and I studied linguistics in university, and one of my languages was Arabic. And so as I was learning the language, I got really in touch with the culture, and I made tons of Arab friends, and many of them were Palestinian American. Or Palestinian descent. And so I got to know them, and they were amazing people, and I got to know their family stories. And they were really, really tragic. And so I felt like that was the right move. I felt like I was on the side of justice and righteousness because I felt horrible over what had happened to them.
Yeah. So, yeah, I think that's natural that we would take compassion on people and hear their stories and so forth. So what did it look like to be involved in this group? What are some of the activities that you were a part of?
Yeah, we would do fundraisers and protests, and generally just connect together over shared ideology.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
But you're not a part of that group now, right?
I'm not.
Okay. So something happened along the way, and you left the group Students for Justice in Palestine. What is it that changed?
Well, I ended up visiting Israel, and that really changed a lot of things for me.
Okay, so you came to Israel, and what happened on that trip?
Well, I had been taught a lot of things about Israel, and when I came here, I came just for a biblically based archaeology tour, a short tour because I love the Bible and I've studied it since I was young. And that's all I expected to find. But what I actually also found was an entire nation of people that I had been discounting. I had never heard the Israeli side of the story. And so I began to meet Israeli people, both Arab and Jewish Israelis, and hearing their stories. And it began to really shake my paradigm. It was actually very uncomfortable. Okay,
so what are some of the foundational things that you believed, but then when you got here and you started talking to people, you realized, oh, this is different than I've been told?
Yes, I really saw Israel as kind of this harsh, cruel kind of Goliath to the David of the Palestinian struggle, if you accept the biblical metaphor. But what I actually found when I got to know Jewish people and Israeli people and their life stories and their generational trauma, I started to understand that there's a way deeper history that I was not aware of. And I had learned one side of this story.
Yeah.
But in fact, when I started learning the other side of the story, I began to understand that actually that wasn't the truth, that Israel is actually more of the David in this struggle, in the Goliath of the surrounding 22 Arab states, if you will.
Yeah, because, the nation of Israel is about the size of New Jersey.
Yes.
And the landmass of the Arab nations surrounding Israel, far outnumbers this little tiny nation.
Yeah.
And I think with a visit here, like you're saying, you're able to see that this area is so small.
It is.
Especially compared to the United States, where we make our home. So you came here, you talked to Israelis, you heard maybe what you'd call a different narrative.
Yes.
And that narrative wasn't what Students in Justice for Palestine was telling you.
Yeah.
Okay, what else contributed to your heart for the Jewish people, which you now seem to have?
There were multiple aspects to it. The big one, the hurdle I had to get over was intellectual, because I was just like, I can't, with my justice, understanding, I can't understand how this could happen. How do we still have this crisis today? Why are there still Palestinian refugees? It makes no sense.
Right.
And so I started researching the history of the conflict in depth and reading primary sources and reading books about the history. And I learned so many things that really began to surprise me. The big one for me is the refugee issue, and it's still a horribly painful issue. And I don't want to discount that at all, but what I noticed was that in 1948, after the Six-Day War and everything that happened and unfolded, I'd always known that there were about 700,000 refugees that were created during the War of Independence in 1948. But after I started learning and digging a bit deeper into the history, I also learned an entire other side of the story I'd never heard, which was the fact that there were over 850,000 Jewish refugees that were created all throughout the Middle East and North Africa as they were ethnically cleansed and driven from their homes. But yet the 700,000 Palestinian people were left, many of them, stateless. And that's a tragedy, and we have to ask why.
Yeah, I think that's an interesting point, because certainly I would say what captures most headlines today, at least the headlines that I read, is the Palestinian refugee problem.
Yes.
But what you're saying is, in 1948, there were over 800,000 Jewish refugees, if I hear you right.
Yes.
But Israel absorbed all those, and so they're no longer considered refugees.
Right.
Okay.
Right. And the Palestinian people are, and there are so many reasons for that.
Yeah.
And that's what I started to understand on an intellectual level, really understanding what is going on here, what happened here. And then it was also on a deeper spiritual level, because for me, I grew up in a Christian home. I've always read the Bible. I came to Israel and I experienced a very profound, whoa, my entire faith, everything that gives my life meaning and purpose was born in this land. And Jesus, Yeshua, was a Jewish rabbi, and he had so many things to say to the people of this region, and I received this message, by proxy in a way. And so there was kind of a new humility with that. And it also made me understand, wait a second, the biggest thing for me, I'll tell you, was an experience I had in Yad Vashem, which is the memorial to the victims of the Holocaust, the Shoah. And I had been there. I'd been to many Holocaust museums. It wasn't like it was a new message. But what happened to me as I walked into that museum was I realized, wait, this is the story of the generational trauma of the Jewish people, and by extension of the Israeli people. And anti-Semitism is so widespread throughout thousands of years of history that this just is not normal. There has to be a deeper spiritual evil underneath this hatred. It's called the oldest hatred, right? And so I also realized that I had been complicit in that I had, in my hatred towards Israel, that I had actually been buying into an anti-Semitic ideology, not just a healthy criticism of the Israeli government, which we should all be able to do for any country.
So, and
it was something else.
Yeah, I appreciate that distinction. You're saying there is a difference between believing certain narratives which might cast Israel or the Jewish people in a way that's simply not true,
right,
and criticism, right? Because none of us should escape some kind of criticism, especially a government.
Right. Well, and I would say Israelis are their own harshest critics. My Israeli friends are extraordinarily critical of their government from whatever side they fall. And Israelis are actually not a monolith at all. They're ethnically diverse. They're ideologically diverse. There's left, there's right, there's center, just like in the U.S.
Yeah.
We're not all the same.
Which is a sign of a good, healthy society.
It is.
A pluralistic society where folks can debate and believe whatever they want. I'm not sure that most folks are aware of that.
Yeah.
So you were telling us about how your heart was changed, and you mentioned the Bible and so forth. Did God play any other role in that? What was God doing in your heart as this change was happening? He obviously was showing you were complicit in something that you shouldn't have been. Yeah. You mentioned he was showing you that you were kind of in debt to this people. So is there anything else? Yes,
I think there was a level of repentance there when I realized that just means to change your mind. And I just said right there, you know what, I'm sorry. That wasn't my intention. I want, justice and goodness and love for all people, and I didn't know that I was partnering this, but I was. And you know, it was just so clear to me that there was such a change in my heart after that moment, because when I used to see an Israeli soldier, I would have a certain set of thoughts, you know, that were very negative. They were very like, you know, and then it changed, and I really believe that was a work of God in my heart, because then I would see an Israeli soldier and I would think, man, you're just a person. You're just a human who has your own story, and you have your own pain, and just like I do, and just like my friends do.
Yeah. So I have one final question for you, and it's this. If you could speak to someone who's currently a part of the Students for Justice in Palestine movement, what would you say to them? Because there may be some viewers who are hearing your story and they're currently involved in it just like you were.
Yes, you know, I would say that your impulse for justice is a good thing. And I would just say that, you know, please be careful to make sure that it's placed rightly, that you get all of the facts before you make your opinion. I think a lot of times we just have this human tendency to kind of have our tribe, have our opinion, and then we don't accept any other information that doesn't fit the narrative we've created, and that's really not okay. And it takes courage to think outside of that paradigm. So I would say, you know, it's good to care about the downtrodden, but I just would hope that you would care for all of humanity too, and to care enough to really investigate the situation and look for facts.
Yeah.
And
well, it seems to me like one of the major things that helped you just see things differently is not only the intellectual pursuit of wanting the truth, which is important, but you came to Israel.
Yes.
And you talked to people and you saw the land and so forth. Would you recommend other people come to Israel and see it?
100%. That was just such a game changer. It's one thing to read about it. It's one thing to hear a TikTok, you know, about it. It's another thing to come here and to meet people. And I think there's also a humility with that, of understanding, like, I don't know everything about this situation. And also for the majority of people who are approaching this, if you don't have a personal connection, you know, with either side of this conflict, like, there's this tendency to project my own guilts or problems or desires onto it. But really, if you come here and you meet people and you understand their lives a little bit better, I think we can drop some of our self-centeredness and actually just see people for who they are.
This has been helpful. So thanks for sharing with us. Greatly appreciate it. It was wonderful to see you here in Jerusalem.
Awesome. It's my pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you.